But I think the purpose of life isn't to survive life. I think the purpose of life is to live life. And I think that if we're not willing to scare ourselves to death, then paradoxically, we cannot live our life. We'll survive our life at best, but maybe not even that.
Welcome back, everyone, to the School of Greatness podcast. Super pumped about our guest today, JP Sears in the house. Good to see you, man.
Lewis, so good to see you, brother.
Very excited. The Buddha is staring down on us right now and making sure that we're protected, that we are fully enlightened, and we're going to share some great wisdom today.
Yeah,
so I'm excited,
when I walked into this room, it was a beautiful room, by the way, and I just felt this massive push against me. It was just like this energy field, and I thought it was you. And that was a mistake. It's obviously the orange
the Buddha. Yes.
In the tradition of the School of Greatness. I love it.
That's it, man. You got a new book out called How to Be Ultra Spiritual. 12 and a half steps, not 12, not 13, 12 and a half steps to spiritual superiority. And I'm very excited about this. A funny book. Meant to be more humor, right? Not really meant to teach as much as more to bring light to certain things. Is that correct?
Well, here's my biased point of view.
Yes.
I like to share my perspectives through the language of humor.
Yes.
So using humor, comedy, I mean, to me, certainly one of the purposes of the book is experience the levity of laughter. I think we all take ourselves too seriously. But also my deeper intention is for deeper messages to be delivered through the language of humor. So a couple of those messages that I've intended to be embedded in the book, and that's always for the reader to determine, are those messages actually in it, eye of the beholder kind of thing.
Right.
But I love to advocate for people to let go of that which served you, that no longer serves you. Just like we take in a breath and we let it go as soon as it stops serving us so we can bring in a fresher breath. And then I love to advocate for people to be unapologetically their true self. And that's another deeper message that I've intended to be in the humor.
Sure. Would you say that this humorous self of you is really your true self?
No, I would say it's definitely a part of my true self. I think, sometimes people get confused. They're like, JP, I watched your comedy videos, and then I saw you have these serious videos, and I'm confused by you. Are you a comedian, or are you serious? And my answer is yes. And, there are two parts that help make the whole of me. And to me, it's just like asking, do you have a right hand or a left hand? It's like, well, I have both. And to me, part of the beauty of life, and I think my journey of being as much myself as I possibly can in any given moment, is to be dynamic. Which aspect of me am I in touch with in any given moment? Sometimes it's the humorous aspect of me. Sometimes it's the very sincere aspect of me. And other times, like, it's a vulnerable aspect or a sad, hurt part of me. So to me, really kind of like mental health, and I think more like heart health, is being able to be very true to the aspect of ourself in our inner being that's needing our attention in that moment.
Sure. Okay, cool. Well, you're from Ohio, right? From Bowling Green?
Man, they say all enlightened people are from Ohio. Would you argue with that?
Speaking my language, baby.
I think it was Buddha that said that.
Right? Yeah. No, the silent monk said that, right?
He says so much, I stopped listening.
Exactly. From Bowling Green area, and you actually became certified as a life coach in Columbus, Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was, 15 years ago?
I've been doing life coaching for about 15 years, maybe a little over at this point. So, way back when I got certified. Beautiful organization called Journeys of Wisdom, definitely abstract, artsy fartsy, in the most grounded way possible at the same time. But I connected with a very powerful mentor in that organization, John McMullen. Really changed my life, aside from really arming me with professional tools to help people help themselves find more meaning in their life, heal their heart, step into their greatness if I don't get sued for copyright infringement. Sure.
Yes. Okay.
Let me have you sign this waiver. But also doing the life coach training made a huge impact on my life. I rocked up to the courses very arrogant, saying like, I want to help other people because they need help. And of course, yes, we all have room for upgrades, but I quickly became humbled, realizing I'm projecting my need for healing onto other people because I didn't know how to identify it for myself. I didn't know how to be vulnerable enough to realize like, wow, I'm really compromised inside. I've got pain in my heart. I've got issues that are just numbed out, so I didn't even know they were there. So, my desire to help other people kind of led me on a gluten-free breadcrumb trail into my own heart. So I'm very grateful that I spent some time being arrogant enough to just think like, oh, I'm just so put together. Let me just be the beacon of light for other people.
And how old were you during this?
I was 20 when I started the journey of helping myself and helping other people.
Wow. Okay. What was the biggest pain you were trying to overcome, or that you realized you needed to overcome?
And it took me a while to realize it, to be honest with you, but I would say numbness. I think, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but I find when we're physically numb, psychologically numb, it's the most tormenting experience we can have. And I think it's paradox because it's like paradoxical. It's so painful that we don't feel the pain that we're in. And it's like a lot of us can relate. Like if you've fallen asleep, you wake up in the middle of the night, you've been laying on your arm. It's like, oh, this is numb. Like it's like unnerving. Or you sit on the toilet scrolling Facebook too long. It's like, oh, now my legs are numb. But that was my being. I was just numb because as a child, teenager, I didn't know how to process my emotions. So just I think at a very unconscious level, I would disconnect. And I'd have the illusion like, oh, my pain's not there because I don't feel it. But I do believe that just because we don't see, smell, hear, taste, or feel something doesn't mean it's not there. And I found for my life and working with lots of clients that what we don't know about ourselves tends to really, really control and dominate our life. So becoming more emotionally sensitive, breaking the threshold of my numbness has been, I think, my biggest breakthrough. And just adding on to that, giving myself permission to feel hurt, giving myself permission to not know, giving myself permission to say, I don't feel okay right now, has ironically made me feel much more okay. It's like giving myself permission to be a human is just somehow
just
liberating.
Acknowledging it, I think, when we acknowledge what we're feeling.
Yeah, man.
It relieves some of the pain, I think.
For sure. And I think when we acknowledge ourselves, like, how am I actually feeling right now? That's self-acceptance. I mean, it really is. But to me, I've done so much self-rejection. Like, oh yeah, I feel sad. I'm not supposed to feel sad. Real men don't feel sad. I'd be invalidated if I had, challenging emotions when I was a kid. So it's just not okay. But that's like all self-rejection. And man, I don't know if there's anything more painful or tormenting than self-rejection, especially self-rejection that turns into numbness.
Then what were you numbing from or rejecting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was a couple things. I was rejecting my emotional experiences that made me feel unstable because when I grew up, my family from the outside, like so many other families, looks like a good family. Nothing is as it seems. But there were challenges inside the family, some substance abuse, marital issues with my parents. They were, getting divorced, not getting divorced, separating, moving out, a lot of slinky-like effects throughout my childhood. So what that equaled to me is instability. So it didn't feel safe for me to feel unsafe emotions. It wasn't safe enough to feel unsafe emotions. So at not a conscious level, but just sort of like a reactive unconscious level, I took on the mission like I need to be the stable one. One, because it doesn't feel safe enough for me to feel my unstable feelings like sadness. No way. Oh, family's breaking apart. I don't feel sad about it because I didn't feel safe enough to go into the unsafe emotions. And then I think, all people are way more intuitive than what we can comprehend, including myself. So, a lot of family secrets in my family. And I think a secret is just an illusion when we realize like we're very intuitive beings. Like we feel the energy of it. It's like
it's hard to lie.
It is. Like we've all walked into a room and it's like, wow, there's tension here.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily intellectually know why there's tension or what's going on.
Something's off. Yeah.
Man, the heart never lies. We feel something. So at that kind of feeling intuitive level, I would feel like there's instability in my family. So I want to stabilize my family. So instead of being a freaking child, I took on the role of being the stable adult, which, and now I'm in a place of learning to be a child for the first time. I think it was Picasso who said it takes a long time to become young. And I was like, wow, that's true for me. You know, I was a kid, but I didn't necessarily give myself permission to have a childhood.
To play.
Absolutely.
To joke around, to have fun, yeah.
Man, and to me, that play, joking around, having fun, that's where the quality of life comes in. And I think there's also so much connection to ourself when we can kind of unwind and have an exhale of our being enough that it's like, I can play.
Yeah.
And you know, I love watching children play because you just see how connected they are. I mean, it's like sometimes they're connected like in their own little world, like whatever realm they're in. But also playfulness is part of what integrates them into their tribe. It's like a language of connection itself from my delusional point of view.
Right. So did you feel like you were living a serious life all in your 20s? And how old are you, 35 or?
35, yeah. You're very intuitive.
I try, yeah. I try to be unattached. So were you pretty, were you like a big adult then when you were in your 20s and early 30s until you started taking on this new kind of playful role and persona?
Yes. I would say I definitely was taking myself in life too seriously, and I would say I was very playful on the surface, not a deep playfulness. So ever since I can remember, just a super young child, I've had a sense of humor, which can be, it's like, oh, that looks playful. Well, is it? My sense of humor, I think, was developed because it helped me compensate for my pain. If I felt insignificant inside, which yes, I did during my childhood, I learned if I can make someone laugh, it feels like they value me. And if it feels like they value me, then it means I'm significant. And if I'm significant because I just made them laugh, then I don't feel this sense of insignificance that I'm relentlessly trying to escape from within myself. So what that means is I became addicted to making people laugh. It's just kind of like my survival strategy. And I think the good thing about that is it helped train me in sort of like the becoming a black belt of comedy. Thousands and thousands of tens of thousands of repetitions of reading people. What's going to make this person laugh, figure it out super quick, and then make them laugh. It's just so much practice.
Yeah.
So I think there was the illusion of playfulness, and now as I'm doing my best to not escape myself, but go deeper into myself in this phase of life, I prayerfully hope, and I think, but of course I don't like to believe everything I think. I think now my humor it's flipped, where now it's engineered to embrace myself and using humor to invite other people to embrace themselves rather than deflect from themselves. Because I think humor is powerful. I think it's a very powerful energy. You can use it to hurt people. You can use it to help people. You can use
heal.
It. Absolutely. I think it has very much an alchemist healing energy where if you can laugh about something, not in a shameful way, but in a way where you have a new awareness and a new perspective of that something, I think it alchemizes and it can completely transform the experience of it.
How has your business evolved? I mean, when did you start taking on this character doing these videos?
Yeah, October 4th, 2014 was the first comedy.
So 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And a little less than 2.5 years ago. And was your business as a life coach doing pretty well before then?
Yeah, it was doing pretty well. And I wanted it to do even better.
Sure.
It's like, my schedule was pretty full with one-on-one clients, but it could be more full. So
Yes.
I started my YouTube channel with the intention of like, let me get more exposure and get more clients into my business. And for the first year and a half of doing YouTube, it was just all sincere life advice videos coming from my heart. Topics like how to heal depression, that kind of stuff. Then about a year and a half into it, I could no longer betray the comedic part of me.
Sure.
It's like we said earlier, that's not all of who I am, but it's a part of me. So once I started to allow my sense of humor to come out on camera, man, I thought it was going to be the worst thing ever for my business. I was wrong.
Really?
And that taught me, don't believe everything you think, JP.
Right.
But it made my schedule more than full. And for too long,
getting clients.
Yeah,
Wow.
getting clients. And it took me a long time to figure out how to say, like, I can't see you next week. I can see you in 6 weeks, or I can see you in 8 weeks. And then, other aspects of how the business has changed, so many doors of opportunity I've been blessed with doors of opportunity to open, publishers approaching me to do a book, TV show stuff in the works, speaking gigs, performing gigs, and other stuff down the pipeline. So, now the client business, I've had to take a step away from it. Just there's so much else that feels purposeful to fertilize in the garden of my career right now at this time.
Right. Wow. Now, when you were taking on these new clients who found you from this kind of humorous point of view, were they able to take you seriously, or were they able to heal themselves or go through different challenges in a certain way, or is it more like, is he the character, or is he coaching me, or?
Yeah. Plenty of people didn't know how to take me. They're like, JB, I don't know how to understand you. And it's like, what do you think it's like living with me? It's like, I don't know how to take me. But the ones who would, they find my comedy videos, and then from there, some of them would find, oh, you have serious videos too. So the ones that came to me as a client, they were ready to do the work. They figured it out, like, yes, there is a very sincere offering from this goofy, delusional redhead.
Right.
So, yeah, and a lot of them didn't know what to expect, but they knew it was a sincere offering.
Got it. And do you feel like they got more results based on your brand or persona of being kind of this bigger personality?
Well, in a way, yes. I think the part of the bigger personality, the comedy side, people could relate to that.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know sort of the precious spiritual teachers, self-growth teachers. And I don't mean precious in a bad way, but just precious. Like, there's really no playfulness about them. And that's great, but not everybody can relate to that. Yeah. So people were seeing me like, here's this Yahoo, and it kind of makes him real. Like, he can laugh at himself. He can laugh at me in like a good way, not a shaming way. So I think that helped get people in the door that otherwise weren't able to relate to the idea of helping themselves grow and heal inside their heart.
Right. Do you wish you would have done this sooner?
Man, it's a tricky game, playing with the illusion of time. And I'm going to give you two answers, probably because I'm afraid of being wrong. So let me cover all my bases. Part of me would say yes. And to be honest with you, I alluded to it a minute ago. I really sold myself a story that said my humor on a professional level is bad for business. It will be bad for business. So
really, gotcha.
Yeah. So there's a part of me that would say, I wish I would have taken off the chains of restriction earlier. And then there's another part of me that I'm just so hungry to be myself, express myself, and help other people embrace just their own weird self. And I don't think I would have this hunger and passion and what really feels like a never-ending stream of energy inside of me. I don't think I would be in touch with this if I wasn't voided of it for so long. It's kind of like part of me was locked in the basement of my own self for long enough, not seen the light of day. And now after a number of years, it's like, I'm outside and I so appreciate this beautiful gift of being free in this world where I can do anything I want and I can, tirelessly go after my purpose. Right. So with all of that said, and I love to hear your perspective on this. I think there was a necessary reason why I needed to betray myself for so long. So, sure. But I'd be curious about your perspective of that.
I think it all comes at the right time. If I would have started my podcast sooner, I don't think I would have been ready for it.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have had the skills necessary. I don't think I would have known what to do with some of the information I was getting and the interviews. And so I think it all is in perfect timing. But I think we need to listen to when we feel called forth to do something, we shouldn't reject it for too long.
Yeah.
So if you would have heard this calling 3 years ago and just waited until now, I think you would have been doing yourself a disservice.
For sure.
So I don't know how long you were kind of feeling like this urge to do like a funny video or just like come out with humor, but it sounds like it came out at the right time, and specifically when people wanted it, and also timing with technology, Facebook native video coming out, things going viral in a sense. Maybe you wouldn't have done as well if you did 3 years earlier.
So.
Or maybe you wouldn't have gotten the traction that would have inspired you to keep going or something,
I think that's a beautiful perspective. Can I ask, how many years ago was it that you started to really shine with your offering of helping empower people?
I mean, say about 4 years ago I started the podcast, and about 4.5, 5 years ago I really wanted to transition into the other business I was doing into kind of really helping more people.
Yeah.
Not just creating like social media courses, which what we were doing, but really tapping into the essence and heart of individuals and figuring out how I could serve on a bigger platform as opposed to just one-on-one.
Yeah.
And, awaken myself with all, the reason I interview so many people is to work on myself.
Nice.
It's like I interview people based on what I need the most.
Man, I'm right there with you.
So it's my journey. It's like a selfish reason I'm doing it. But I have a platform so I can get these big names to come on and like learn their stories and then share it with the world, because I feel like it's every time I was having conversations before my podcast, I was like, man, I wish people could hear this. All these conversations that I was having with leaders, I was just like, man, people need to hear this.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was able to hear like secrets from these individuals, stuff they weren't telling anyone. So I was like, what if I could get people on to share it with the world? So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I love your humbleness. I love your humbleness where you can say like, yeah, I interview people because I need to learn.
Yeah.
I need to grow. And you talk to people out loud so other people can eavesdrop in on the conversation, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I personally think part of what makes you a powerful teacher, a powerful influencer, is just that you own it. You own like, hey, I'm here in the muddy swamp working on my own stuff. I think I think it's a thing of the past where people have this mass appeal to the illusion of someone being
perfect,
put together, perfect. Let me talk down on you while I teach you stuff. It's like, man, people want connection, and they can't connect to someone who's not real. When you and I had a phone call a couple of weeks ago, something I shared with you, and it's so true for me. I so admire hearing your stories about vulnerability, abuse you've gone through as a child, adversity with your father's issues. It just inspires me. It gives me this sense of permission, like, yes, it's okay that I have my version of that too. It's okay. And that's so liberating.
I think it's the most important thing we can do is really talk about the challenges we go through as opposed to never talk about them. Because, like you said, we create such a deeper instant connection when we open up and we share. And we don't need to be like bawling in tears, crying about like everything that's happened to us every moment of our lives.
Yeah.
But I think when the opportunity arises, we should allow ourselves to move into some type of real conversation of the crap that we've gone through when necessary, and being discerning and, knowing the right timing of when to say certain things. But, the key to success in life is relationships, and the key to successful relationships is vulnerability, intimacy, real connection. And you can't do that when you're just talking about all the good things.
For sure. The good things, it's a great dimension. I mean, let's celebrate the good things.
Absolutely.
And, man.
The struggles, the challenges, the things that we're working on that aren't, lifting us up to the highest level. Like, what are those things? For me, that's what excites me.
For sure. And that's the opportunity for growth as well.
Mm-hmm.
Life wouldn't be very exciting if, at least for me, if someone came up and said, Lewis, you've hit the peak.
Right.
Like, you actually can't grow. Things cannot get better. They cannot get more enjoyable. There's not going to be any more mystery in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So,
might as well die then.
Pretty much.
Right? I mean, well, isn't happiness directly related to growth? Like, the amount of growth that we have is based on, like, our level of happiness. I think Tony might have said that or someone, but I just feel like if we're not growing, we're slowly dying.
I agree. And I think if our happiness is related to growth, I think our growth and happiness is also related to our willingness to be afraid in stepping into the unknown, into mystery, because growth doesn't happen in our comfort zone. It happens in our uncomfortable zone, the mystery of it. And I think it's human nature to be afraid of the unknown. But it's kind of like, wow, if I'm not willing to be afraid and go forward anyway, then I can't grow. And if I can't grow, I can't be happy. So I think it's paradoxical. A willingness to be afraid is directly proportional to the amount of happiness we can get. And I think a lot of us are too afraid to be afraid. So it's like we're afraid squared. We're afraid to be afraid, so we don't move. But I think true courage, which equals growth, which equals happiness, true courage is, I am afraid, and I'm the warrior going forward anyway. I think archetypally, the warrior is not fearless. I think that is just a fairy tale BS myth. Right. I think the warrior is the one who's connected to his or her heart and feels the fear, yet has the courage to do his or her task anyway, to hear the call to quest and abide by the mission.
It's going to be scary going into battle,
Yeah.
With other people like charging you with guns and knives.
For sure, and especially a lot of those guns and knives that are charging us come from our own freaking psyche,
within inside,
self-doubt, inner critic.
Man. Yeah, it's interesting, that you talk about that. I'm glad you're sharing this because every year in my business, I take on something new that I've never done, and that scares the crap out of me. Because I feel like, one, I do it for myself because I know that if I just keep doing the same thing every year, I'm going to get bored.
Yeah.
And my business is only going to grow a certain amount. And I'm not going to differentiate myself from anyone else in my space if I just keep doing the same things. Certain things I stay consistent to build momentum. But then I always bring on at least one new thing every year that I've never done that scares the crap out of me or that seems like a big challenge.
Yeah.
And then after we do it, it's like, okay, now we know how to do this. Let's make it better. But let's bring on something else that's new. And it scares the crap out of me. But it's like, man, we get to figure something out together. We get to do something that we've never done that seems impossible, but we're going to figure it out.
Man, and I love that. Infinity is always bigger than we think it is. And I think infinity is the capacity we have to grow. And I know that sounds a little cliche and airy-fairy and abstract, yet I think it's freaking true.
Yeah.
And to me, it's so inspiring to not play it safe in life. It's like, and I think one of the great curses that someone with success could have is, wow, this has worked for me, so I'm going to keep doing exclusively what has worked for me. But there's no risk in that. There's no growth. And is there happiness? I think
comfort.
There's comfort for sure. And from my delusional point of view, I think a lot of people, when they're talking about like the pursuit of happiness, they're saying the word happiness, but they're not talking about happiness. I think they're talking about comfort. I think the direction a lot of people take when they're quote unquote pursuing happiness, they're pointed towards comfort. They're trying to achieve a sense of comfort.
Or acquire something, right? They're trying to achieve or acquire a certain sense of money or freedom or something. They're trying to have it.
For sure.
And then they'll be happy.
For sure.
As opposed to the process of just being happy.
Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Yeah.
Have you interviewed Brene Brown?
Not yet. I'd love to.
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorite authors. I've never read any of her books, but she's not going to stop me. She's one of my favorite authors. A quote that she has that I absolutely am in love with, and I might be a little bit off, but I might be right on too, but it's something along the lines of, he or she who's willing to be the most uncomfortable not only is the bravest, but rises the highest.
Absolutely.
And I think rises the highest, she's not talking about like significance and status, though that might come with it, but I think rises the highest in terms of quality of life, satisfaction, connection with self and other people, and honoring their life purpose. But playing it safe for the comfort, for the status, acquiring, it's like, wow, there's, I think that's the repel of a great life, even though it's what we create. I think self-preservation, we want safety.
Yeah, sure.
Self-realization, we want risk. Safety equals death of our self-realization, and safety equals life of our self-preservation. But I think the purpose of life isn't to survive life. I think the purpose of life is to live life. And I think that if we're not willing to scare ourselves to death, then paradoxically, we cannot live our life. We'll survive our life at best, but maybe not even that.
That's powerful. I think this is why so many people go through what we call midlife crisis, is because they've been striving for something their whole lives to acquire or to achieve, and then they get up and they're like, I'm not fulfilled, I'm not happy, and now what do I really need to do? It's like they get some JP and they're like, okay, I need to go be like a comedian, or I need to do this, do the thing I've always wanted to do that I've never taken a risk on. Yeah. And then they start to wake up a little.
Man, that midlife crisis, I'm a big fan of them. In fact, I'd invite people, like, don't necessarily wait till midlife. Yeah, right. I think, it's a kind of a proverbial archetypal passage that I think is always there. It's like we can find it, or if we don't, it'll eventually find us. But I think, like anything, if we're proactive rather than reactive and go after that crisis of self, I think that becomes a birth canal. I think the midlife crisis, it's a membrane that we go through, and on the other side is not who we think we are. It's not even who we want to be. I think much more significant, it's who we actually are. And man, thank God, or Santa Claus, whoever's up there.
Tooth Fairy.
Tooth Fairy, the doctrine. Do you have a model of the Tooth Fairy?
I should.
I'm a little offended you didn't cater to my religious beliefs.
Exactly.
But thank God it feels so unsatisfying living a life where we're not honoring ourselves. I mean, thank God we eventually, midlife crisis, acquire this inner void where we just become so hungry for something more. We may not know what it is, but we know what it's not.
True. And that's just as powerful. Knowing I don't want this, or this isn't what it is, or who I am anymore. Yeah. So I'm going to go shed that skin and step into something new. What would you say is your definition of spirituality?
Being connected to something greater than ourselves. Maybe at a theoretical level, we say like, oh, we are connected to everything else. All is one. But like, okay, let's be in our lower self here for a second. Being connected to something that I think is beyond myself. So yes, I have an ego. I have a sense of separation. Here's JP. Here's Lewis. I'm separate from you. So for me, being connected to something beyond me. And I think what Tony Robbins, he's always talking about contribution. And I think that contribution is being connected to something bigger than us. That can be another person. That's a collective consciousness that's bigger than us. It can be our community. It can be nature. And we can call it God. We can call it our higher self. We can call it our intuition. But something beyond ourself, a connection to it. And I would really differentiate, not a theoretical connection, not I think I'm connected to something, and that makes sense that I would be connected to something greater than me. But I'm talking about a feeling-oriented connection. Like right now, I feel a connection to you, like this kinship, brothership with you. And it's a beautiful feeling, much different than just thinking about the connection.
Right. Do you have a religious practice?
I was raised pretend Catholic.
Pretend Catholic.
Anytime my grandparents were around, my family acted like we went to church every weekend, even though we did. I don't have any religious affiliation. I personally think I love to get little gems of a lot of different religions
Sure.
and, you know, the real ritualistic dogmas. And I'm not necessarily saying dogma in a bad way, not necessarily a good way either, but leave the rest of the dogma to other people. But I love to just like mine the nutrients from any religion, any philosophy. And I personally think so many religions are all saying the exact same thing, but calling it by different names.
Right.
It's like we're all looking at the color blue, but we call it by different names. And then we fight over how we're calling the same thing something different. Man, I'm a big fan of whatever connects us more together. That's going to be like and if that's a religion for a person, great. I personally just don't find much sense of connection to myself or other people or that which I think is beyond me through religious practices.
Do you think religion is good? Or isn't it one of the causes of all the wars?
I think people are the causes of wars. I think how people interpret religion is what creates wars. I think religion is just a power potential. And any power potential, just like humor, I think has the potential to be constructive or destructive, connective or disconnective. So I think a lot of people think they're experiencing a religion, but I think what they're really experiencing is themselves, their values, their judgments, their intolerances, their needs projected onto a religion, and then they justify themselves by saying, nope, this is the religion. It's not me. So, and by the way, we can't question that now. You can't question me. You can't question my sense of certainty because I've just played the trump card. This is the religion. Can't question it. I mean, if you question it, I'll get angry because I'll feel threatened about my
beliefs.
Yeah, my beliefs, like what I am to the world and what the world is to me.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm curious your affiliation with religion, if you have any that's important to you.
I grew up in a religion called Christian Science.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
And it was all about the mind, mastering the mind, and realizing that we're all spiritual beings and that we're not physical beings. And so, I never had shots growing up. It was like all about not focusing on matter.
Yeah.
When we put attention on matter, then we become more physical. If we put attention on spirituality and the mind, then we're separate from our physical beings.
So non-matter matters more than matter matters.
Exactly, yeah. So I grew up in that. There were a lot of, challenges I faced with just understanding it because I'm like, well, this is physical. I feel something, so how is it not? So I was just very confused. But in a lot of ways, it set me up for a very powerful life as well in taking my mind to completely different places that my peers were not willing to do. And, for an example, my father never celebrated my birthday growing up. And I didn't understand why. I would go to all these other parties and kids would have cakes and presents and, donkeys and bouncy castles or whatever. And I'm like,
the donkeys you had,
right? Yeah, right. And then my birthday would come around and nothing. No celebration, no cake, no party, presents, nothing. And I remember, when I was like 7 or 8 or something, I'd be like, Dad, how come we don't celebrate my birthday? And he goes, it's not that we don't want to celebrate you. He said that I don't believe in time. I don't believe in age because your age, I never want you to be limited by how young or how old you are from going after your dreams. And at the time, all I wanted was cake. So I didn't really care, but it sunk in eventually. I was like, okay, in my teen years when I was playing sports, I was like, maybe I am the youngest on this team, but I'm not going to let my age hold me back from pursuing my dreams and being great on this team. And, when I went after playing professional football and going after business, I was really one of the youngest guys in kind of the industry starting something. And I didn't have a college degree. I didn't have any entrepreneurial experience. I never made money before. But that mindset and belief of it doesn't matter how old or young you are, if you believe it enough, you can create what you want. And so for me, it was a very powerful mindset teaching, getting raised with this type of philosophy. And there were certain things that I didn't resonate with and didn't use those, kind of like you do with all religions. You take what you like and use it how you can to serve you the best. And but I think it helped me in a lot of ways with my mindset.
And so you're saying in the immediate moments in your childhood was like, oh, I want cake and it's my birthday, but you're saying it's my birthday isn't really a thing.
Right.
So you didn't necessarily...
That was just his thing. That wasn't like the religion's thing. That was just like him.
Oh, that was just the religion of fatherhood.
Right. It wasn't like the religion didn't celebrate people's birthdays. I think my dad was just kind of like an extremist in spirituality and time. You know, he didn't believe in time. You know, it's infinity, right?
Yeah.
There is no start and end. It's like it's always been here and always will be here.
Yeah, he sounds ultra spiritual,
right? He should be in the book. Yeah.
So those beliefs of your father's, religious or not, I believe I'm hearing you say you didn't necessarily understand or feel the benefit immediately, right. But the seed was planted and you got nutrition from it later on. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So. For me, it's powerful, but I wouldn't say I'm practicing any religion. You know, I've interviewed so many different spiritual leaders and individuals in general. Mm-hmm. The more I learn, I realize that, like, I don't know, the more I learn from everyone, I question everything. Yeah. I question everything, and I realize how, like, ignorant I am to so much and how ignorant all of us are, really. Man. You know, there is no, in my mind, it's like the answer, I don't have all the answers still. And not one religion can give me all the facts or the foundation. And I don't believe in blind faith just because someone said, just trust it because I say so. And because I got a message that says to trust it blindly. Like, I can believe in certain things, you know, that may not be in front of us. You know, there's something that might be here that I can't see. I can believe in that because of experiences, because of shared experiences, because of feelings. But a lot of things are hard without blind faith. Just, this story. Trust this story from 4,000 years ago. Trust this story. Trust, you know, it's like, and all the translations and all, you know.
And like, potential egoic agendas that are attached to it. Yeah. And on that note, it's like, I really, I'll sound indifferent, maybe. I really don't care what someone's religion is. Yeah. I don't either. Or their life philosophy. What I care about is why. It's like someone says, I'm a Muslim or I'm a Catholic. I don't care. But why are you? Mm-hmm. And I'm intrigued to learn, like, what is their why? Mm-hmm. Do you have a why? I hope so. And if not.
Or just because you were raised in this and it's what your family and friends do. So you do it because you want to feel connected.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what is your why? Does your why serve you? I think is another great question. Yeah. And man, I love your notion of question everything. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe we should even should we question everything?
Sure, I'm open to that.
But man, to me, that is fertilizer of growth, questioning everything. The need to be certain, I think it shuts down growth. Yeah. But a willingness to be curious, question everything. And I think when we truly do question everything, especially the things inside of ourself, our beliefs, our senses of self, I think that perpetuates us into more of, you know, Brene Brown's discomfort. Sure. Which I think that's where life happens, not inside of our comfort zone. I think we can retreat there, catch our breath, but then we have to be the hero going into the hero's journey outside of our comfort zone, questioning things.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to have a foundation of certain beliefs for ourselves. Yeah. Otherwise, we might just be miserable if we don't know why we're here or what our purpose is. So I think it's important for us to find our own purpose, and that could be for purpose for the next 6 months of our lives or for the next year. It doesn't have to be for the rest of my life. Here's my mission. Like,
for sure.
You don't have to know it. And I think a lot of people come to me. Someone called me recently. It was like, I don't know what my purpose is. And she was in tears, like terrified. She's like, I've been trying to find it and I don't know what it is. How do I find it? Yeah. And that's challenging sometimes, I think, when you don't know why you're here.
Yeah. And
I think all of us as kids probably think that, you know, why am I here? You know, a lot of us kids and a lot of adults are like, why am I here? What's the reason?
Yeah. Question for you, Lewis, by the way, thank you for being a guest on your own podcast and turn the tables and interview you. I'm curious, your perspective, how much do you think a person needs to have a conscious sense of what their purpose is?
I think it's important to have a pretty conscious sense, to be grounded in a journey you're going on. Yeah. To be grounded in, like, okay, here's my journey. Again, for me in school, it was like 3-month journeys. It was like, I'm playing football this season, and here's the mission. At the end of the season, we want to achieve X. So I'm going to work towards reaching the mountain and dropping the ring in the fire or whatever it is. Yeah. And so I think it's important to have, a sense of mission and being on a journey. And maybe that journey is just discovering your journey.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like, I'm just going on for the next 6 months, like eat, pray, love style. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to go figure it out. I don't know. But I think if we don't have a direction of where we're heading or where we think we're supposed to be heading, then we're just going to be ping-ponging back and forth on idea and person, and it's going to be extremely frustrating if we don't have at least some sort of idea of where we want to go.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And not that I need to. It's a beautiful perspective, irregardless whether I agree with it. And from my delusional perspective, I see some people, it seems like their quest to find their purpose can distract them from their purpose.
Right.
It's like, I don't think necessarily the purpose of our life is to find our purpose. I think the purpose of our life is to live our purpose, live our life. And I think sometimes, like, call it more like at a intellectual level, like our need to look for our purpose at a conceptual level can distract us from living our purpose. It's like our search for the purpose can leave us blind to, like, oh, I'm sitting in my purpose right now. Which I don't know. It's like
The Alchemist. Have you read The Alchemist?
No. It's definitely on my list of books amazing. I should have read.
My favorite book. It's somewhere over here.
Yeah, I saw it.
But the person goes on a journey to find his riches, right? His gold. He goes on a journey all around the world to discover, his wealth, and he doesn't find it. And I won't spoil the whole story, but he comes back home and realizes that the wealth is underneath a tree in his backyard. Like, all the gold in the world is right there, and it was always inside of him, essentially.
Yeah.
He didn't need to go find it. It was always what's inside of you. It's just being, looking down and seeing it.
Yeah.
And I think, speaking of what you're saying, that it's really important to realize we don't have to go find something, but it's just opening up activating who we are. You didn't go on a journey to find this, comedic sense of self, this humorous sense of yourself. You just activated it and opened it up and said, let me just try this thing on YouTube and do one video. And you're like, oh, let me lean into this and let me do more of it. So I think it's waking up and just being true to what you want to do.
For sure. I love that. And with that conscious sense of purpose, to me, and I love how you kind of implied, like, have sort of like a present moment connotation, like what your story, like, we all need to make up stories. This helps form our beliefs, in my opinion. At least that's my story about stories. But your story about what your purpose is today, like, have that story, because that helps connect us to this, whatever our purpose really is. We need a story about it. But let that be your story for today. Don't cement yourself in for that to be your story of what your purpose is for the rest of your life. And I personally think our purpose is much like anything else that's meaningful. It's constantly growing, expanding, evolving. So if it's like today on, whatever date in 2017, here's my purpose. It's like, wow, 56-year-old JP is going to be resenting me if I tried to shackle him to what I think my purpose is today. But it's like, marry the purpose today, divorce it tomorrow, and marry a bigger version of it.
That's it. I mean, for me growing up, I wanted to be the best athlete I could be. But then when that ended, it was like, okay, my purpose is over. And I went through a time of uncertainty for about 1.5 years, 2 years. I was like, what do I do now for the rest of my life? Because I had no other plans or backups or anything. But then when I said, okay, I'm letting go of this, attachment of, like, needing to be this athlete and stepping into something new, so many things opened up. Yeah. When I finally surrendered to the need of that identity, of that purpose, that's when actually everything started to flow towards me for something greater.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I heard you say is you allowed yourself to shed the skin of who you once were, but it's not who you are anymore. So you shed this old skin of self so that the miracle of who you are now can arise, kind of like the phoenix rising out of the ashes.
That's a phoenix.
Right on, brother. I'm channeling your wall.
Phoenix rising from the ashes. I love it, man. What do you feel is your purpose?
What's been coming up for me lately is facilitating connection. I mean, I've got to be selfish, much like how you could own, like I interview people, I do my work because I have so much to learn. Me connecting more to what I think is my higher self is one of my purposes. And then the heart and soul of my work, the purpose of my work is ultimately to invite people to become more connected and find more meaning in their life.
And how are you going to do that?
It's a good question. Part of how I do that is expressing perspectives through the language of comedy, and that is just a dimension. And, for the past 10 years, I've been going around the world teaching a lot of workshops, retreats, classes, and there's something shifting there. Like, I've been doing that for a long time, but that's been downplayed here the past couple of years while I've been energizing the comedy thing. And it was actually January of this year, just very recently, where I became very aware of this shift inside of me, where the comedy feels so much less important to me now. I mean, it'll continue to be a part of my career until it's not, as hopefully for a while, but I guess I need to be in tune with that.
Sure.
But there's a shift where I need to bring myself more full force into the sincere side of my work.
It's almost going back to the beginning.
Yeah, kind of full circle. It's like there's been the past 2 years this like massive audience building phase. And it's like, okay, now there's that. I've gone in the horizontal direction and now full circle back to the vertical dimension. So I feel that in my heart. The shift has already happened, and how that's going to be externalized in my offerings. Those changes have a little bit still yet to be determined exactly how they'll be looking, but that's a change. It's a change that feels so great to me. And yeah, it's a step out of the comfort zone of exactly what's working well for me the past couple of years. So anyway, part of the answer is I'm going to be very excited to discover it.
That's cool. And what's your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is losing myself. It really is. There's, and I know you have a degree of fame and notoriety as well, and my ego scares the crap out of me. I mean, just like going to a coffee shop and having a bunch of people come up, want to take pictures of me, with me. There's like so much gratitude. I feel like, wow, I so appreciate.
Significance too, right?
Yeah. So the heart says gratitude.
Kid.
Heart says gratitude, and then the ego says significance. So, you've seen the movie The Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
So that says so much to me about what happens inside of me. Like, Frodo was the only one who could carry the ring.
He didn't have the ego.
Yeah. And it was still challenging for him.
Yeah.
But everybody else would be consumed. They would lose themselves feeding off this thing that can't possibly satiate you. So it scares me, the idea that I would lose myself in pursuit of significance and recognition. That's not where my heart's at, but it's a temptation of my ego. And I find, do I want to enjoy kind of the accolades? Yes. Do I want to nurture myself off of them? That's like eating junk food. It's like living off junk food, yet junk food can taste very sweet. It can taste very good. So
just don't go to coffee shops then? Or
it's
stay inside all day?
I'm trying to acquire agoraphobia just to keep myself safe. But, to be honest with you, I love being afraid of losing myself because to me it's like a healthy ego check. It would actually frighten me more if I wasn't afraid. And at the risk of sounding like I'm deflecting from the beautiful question, I'm curious, with the fame and recognition you've acquired, how do you deal with it, and how, if at all, do you feel challenged by it?
It's a good question. Because I would, if I'm looking at myself, I would think that I actually had a bigger ego like earlier in my 20s and in my mid-20s than what I do now. Now, maybe my team or some people around me would say I still have a big ego. I like to think that I ground myself. I'm very grateful. Am humble, as much as I can be, but I'm sure
I'm more humble than you.
You
Lewis.
are. You're competitively more humble than me.
Sorry to
But I think that, I'm also a very confident guy, and I think that people can take it the wrong way sometimes. So I know inside that every morning, I'm the best meditator in the world, better than you, and I'm able to, be more grateful than everyone else in my practice. No, but seriously, I feel like I'm constantly aware of it. I'm constantly aware of like, okay, was I a jerk? Was I an a-hole? Or was I like leading with my ego? Or was that just me being a confident human being?
Yeah.
And being in certainty. And so I think there's like a fine line. And I could obsess over it like, was I too egotistical or too confident? Did I hurt someone in this way? Like, I'm also just going to lean into being myself and lifting others up as much as possible.
I love that.
And not worrying about like if I offended so many people and how I said certain things. So I do my best to, show compassion and humility when I can, and I hope that others can see that. And I think that the right people can, and maybe the wrong, the people who aren't open to that or have their own challenges aren't able to see that, and they think I'm an egomaniac for all I know. So I'm not sure what the full question was, but
well,
am I afraid that I'm going to have an bigger ego? Is that one of the questions? I think that it's funny because my COO, one of my best friends, who's like, some big opportunities are coming up, which I know are happening for you too. And he's like, when this happens, don't let your ego consume you and make you someone different. And I don't feel like I'm any different than what I was, growing up. I feel like being from Ohio, we have the best state, obviously. So
the second best football team apparently this year.
Yeah. So
or fourth best, whatever.
Right.
It was.
Exactly. So for me, I feel like I surround myself with people who are grounded, who are much more grounded and humble than I am, and they constantly keep me in check.
Yeah. And one of the things I loved about your thoughts on the question is how part of your answer was in the form of a question where you consider like, did I lead with my ego or was that just confidence? And I love your lack of certainty around that part. Mm-hmm. To me, that's like a sense of certainty is almost the sign of like poor mental health. But right. The sign of curiosity for me is the sign of a healthy ego. And then, surrounding yourself with people who, you trust, who care genuinely for you, not what you're doing, but more for you. Right. That sounds it's very important for me as well.
Yeah. So who knows? It's a fun journey though. Yeah. I'm excited about everything every day. And I think that, luckily, like, an audience didn't just drop on me like this big audience overnight. It's like a slow growth. And so, when a couple people recognize me out, it's not like 1,000 people are swarming to me every day. It's like a few people are like, oh, I love your podcast. So it's not like this, I'm a god or something feeling. It's like, oh, thank you for acknowledging that you enjoyed like an interview. So
for sure.
It's not a big deal for me, but yeah. What's a question you wish more people asked you that they don't ask?
Yeah, it's a good question. Here's what comes up. What do you think the source of true power is? It's an easy question to ask, but what the hell's the answer?
What is the answer for you?
What is the source of true power? Surrender. Yeah, for me, surrender. It's something where, kind of our buzzword at the moment is ego. Surrender feels very powerless from my ego's perspective, but I think from the heart and spirit, surrender is true power. The illusion of power, control. Mm-hmm. To me, surrender is true power, and I think that means we're not powered by ourself, if you will. I think it means we're powered by a source beyond self, like whatever it is we're connected to, whatever we want to call it, nature, God, Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy, raised in Lewis's household.
Yes.
I've got to go with surrender. It's never worked against me. It's always worked for me, yet it's still intimidating to get into that place of essentially letting go and letting God. I don't know who said that. Maybe Joseph Campbell.
probably.
Let's just say Joseph Campbell. That's credibility.
Yeah, right.
Such a source of power.
Yeah, that's cool. I would say vulnerability for me is the source of power.
Yeah, and I would
similar to surrender.
Yeah, I would say we're actually almost saying the same thing, is
Yeah.
just spelled differently.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not in like if you're actually in war, you don't want to just sit there like with no gun and let someone like kill you. But in general, I think like emotional vulnerability
For sure.
with human conversations is like a sense of power and a source of like actually intimacy and connection. Where again, I think you create the deepest relationships from that space as opposed to I'm perfect, I know everything,
Yeah.
I'm going to control you. That's not a sense of power. So I agree with you there. This question is called the 3 truths. 3 truths. So you've done every video you've ever want to put out there. You've written all the books you want to write. And it's the last day for you many years from now.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, all your videos are erased and your books are erased from time. And you have a piece of paper and a pen to write down 3 things you know to be true about all the things you've learned in life that you would pass on. And that's the only thing people would have to remember you by, is this piece of paper with 3 things you know to be true. What would be your 3 truths?
Number 1, always be yourself. Never apologize for it. Number 2, I think, would be breathe with pain. Breathe with your pain. Don't avoid it. And number 3, stay connected. And I know that's kind of vague, but screw it. That feels good to me right now. And I love that question. I think what you did there, you beautiful, tricky man, is you got me in touch with advice that I need to hear right now. Mm-hmm. Man, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like a true life coach, right?
Am I in your funnel system now, Louis?
Exactly. I want to make sure people get the book, How to Be Ultra Spiritual, 12 and a half Steps to Spiritual Superiority by JP Sears. You guys can get it right now online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, where books are sold everywhere in the U.S., and on Amazon if you're international, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
So make sure you guys go get the book. If you enjoyed this interview, share it out, and you'll love this book. It's going to make you laugh. It's going to make you think. There's some great quotes on here. Holy Mother of God said, it combines the wisdom of bearded Jesus with the playfulness of baby Jesus. The universe said that it's funnier than the law of karma. Buddha said, I got really attached to this book. Krishna, which is the Indian god, is that right?
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. JP is the honey badger of the spiritual kingdom. So make sure you guys get this book. I know you'll laugh a lot, and it'll be very insightful. Before I ask the final question, I want to acknowledge you for a moment, JP, for your incredible gift of actually awakening to who you are and revealing yourself to the world. Because it sounds like to me you were trapped in someone who you weren't for many years, pretending, and now you're not pretending anymore. And look what you've created based on your beautiful gift that you brought to the world. You've created such light, humor, and most importantly, freedom for a lot of people's pain and suffering. From the work you do, your speeches, this book, the videos you put out there. So I acknowledge you for finally opening up to who you truly are and giving the rest of us permission to do the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother. It feels good being.
That's good karma right there.
It was. You blew me away there with it. But it feels very good being seen by you. I appreciate you for that.
Of course, man. Yeah. The final question is, actually, before I ask the final question, where do you like to hang out most online? Where can people connect with you and say hi?
Yeah, all my social media handles are Awaken with JP. Okay. I tend to hang out everywhere. I mean, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, amongst the other places.
Sure. But make sure you guys watch his videos. And if you can watch one of them without laughing, then I'll give you a high five. There you go. Awaken with JP, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. So last question is, what's your definition of greatness?
I have to play the card being your freaking self. and that's easier said than done. I think it's one of the proverbial journeys, not a destination. It's always a present moment work in progress. But I think greatness comes from not necessarily what we do, though we can do great things, not necessarily, the credentials we acquire, but I think greatness comes from what we are. And being ourselves, I think, allows us to express what we are.
JP, thanks for coming on, man.
Louis,
Appreciate you.
Pleasure, brother.
Thanks, man.